Hello, welcome to the second episode of the Goldilocks Zone, where I try to find the point of view that is not too hot, not too cold, but just right, in that happy medium, that Goldilocks zone, if you will. I'm calling this one my special Corona and Masks edition, alright? So I remember when coronavirus slash COVID-19 was new, and there was simply a rising level of concern about the outbreak of the virus. At the time, I wasn't sure exactly what to expect. For whatever reason, I assumed people would act better to contain it. In fact, I was naive to think it might not even set proverbial foot in America. Of course, I was very wrong, but I wasn't alone. Did I think a virus couldn't happen here? No, not exactly, but I thought it probably wouldn't. In the first month or two of hearing about COVID, I was like, we'll probably be fine. Now I almost sing the opposite tune, where I'm willing to say, hey, you might want to consider adding extra face masks over just that one. Still, after over 400,000 plus COVID-related deaths in the United States, some people just aren't getting it. At this point, no one can convince me that the U.S. death toll is small. 437,000 deaths is roughly equal to 147 September 11ths. It also helped drive the point home when someone I know lost her father to COVID-19. And of course, we've lost a lot of, reasonably well-known people, even, some politicians have died and stuff like that, a few celebrities. And, you can even go on YouTube and see that, some YouTube presenters have COVID. So it's not exactly like it's a hidden phenomenon. Yet some people are still treating it like it's a joke or, maybe I'll just take this gamble and it'll be fine. But, you're not just gambling with your own life and health. It's involving other people as well. So don't be selfish about it. And I will bring that point up again in this little essay, I guess you could call it. Anyway, life has its way of sometimes forcing you to see something as less abstract and actually less of a joke, or in this case, less of a hoax, as some people were originally calling it a hoax, including the man who was the president at the time, of course, Donald John Trump. He first dismissed it as a Democrat hoax. And it's like, as part of his conservative speech pattern where you have to always take the word democratic and snip off the final syllable as if that's like some kind of a victorious way of mocking the word or something, like the Democrat Party. Like, okay, seems like a petty kind of thing. But anyway, I'm getting distracted here on that point. So anyway, the question is to mask or not to mask. Definitely wear a mask. If you're in a public place, like a building where there are people around. I live next to a gas station where I get most of my groceries, and unfortunately, I often see people in there who are maskless. Or almost equally as frustrating, people wearing their masks wrong. They'll have their nose fully exposed, which obviously defeats the point of wearing a mask to begin with. If you sneeze, what comes out? Boogers and germs. So going out shopping at a gas station can be a hazard, and I would say it doesn't have to be. Just wear a mask. How long are you going to be in a place like that? 10, 15 minutes maybe? Probably not even that in a lot of circumstances. It's not really that much of a hassle just to put a mask over your face. It really isn't. And I've worked while wearing a mask for like 3 hours or more. So if I can manage that, I think most other people can, all right? Then, of course, there are these people who, for whatever reason, stand too close to me in a line, even with this COVID stuff going on. half the time they do it when there isn't even a big line, where one might at least use that as a possible excuse or explanation. And I swear more people seem to be doing this than before the pandemic occurred. Is that like some sort of attempt to be, defiant or whatever? I don't get it. So what's the deal with those people? I don't even want to be that guy who calls everybody dumb. I want to be the nice guy about this. So on that note, let me explain to you why I still wear a mask in public places, like inside buildings, and may continue doing so even after the COVID crisis appears to be resolved. Okay? So you ever hear the medical expression, prevention is preferable to cure? Well, if you haven't before, now you have. I dig that premise, and it fits in pretty well with similar ideas, like the Marine saying that 2 is 1 and 1 is none. In this case, COVID has forced me into being cautious. I wouldn't say I'm a germaphobe exactly. In fact, I'll probably never be one of those. However, I'm definitely taking extra steps to fight contact with germs as the best prevention to getting COVID with or without vaccine availability. So, like at my job, where I clean things a lot of the time, I actually do act like more of a germaphobe, more than I would be, otherwise, because I'm in a public place dealing with public germs. And it's my job. I see it as my job. You know what I mean? So that makes sense to me, and I don't see anything about it that should make sense to the average person. All right? I see face masks and hand sanitizer as practical, much as a reasonable person would regard a first aid kit as useful to have. Basically, there's nothing wrong with it. In fact, rather than be one of those anti-mask weirdos who treat it as outright slavery, I've ordered some novelty masks to try to actually make it fun. I have a Night of the Living Dead face mask. I have one that makes my face look like a bulldog. And you know what? I've actually gotten plenty of non-sarcastic compliments on my bulldog face mask. In fact, I think I've even made some ladies smile by wearing it. Also, when I talk, it almost looks like the bulldog's mouth is moving, which makes it even better yet. When I mention the ladies noticing it, I'm not saying the mask turned me into a Casanova or something, but that I took an overall crappy situation, and to the best of my ability, I flipped it into something that actually borders on fun. Makes sense, right? So, is there really one type of mask to rule them all? No. You have a lot of varieties and styles to choose from. You can try to get your hands on the most professional grade masks possible, or let's face it, maybe you're just into half-assing it and you just improvise with a bandana. By this point, experts agree that it's better to wear something than nothing, though obviously some masks will be better than others. And is the whole regimen of masks just hype, or can it really actually help you? Virtually every expert out there will now tell you they help protect you and potentially protect others from you. Our experts are not absolutely infallible, but they can generally explain what we need to know so you can protect yourself and your loved ones in this new, I guess it's not entirely new, but it's still a dangerous world. It's not like the Trumpian QAnon world where literally every expert is out to get you and every non-Republican official or expert is drinking baby's blood in a satanic cave under some pizza restaurant. Okay? Got it? Does that make sense to you? Makes sense to me. So, to the anti-maskers out there, I know some people might be watching this video. So, I have to say this. Among other things, some of these people threatened to kidnap the governor of my state of Michigan. And I would like to say, maybe just chill out a little bit. That should suffice as some advice. Yes, there have been lockdown measures that have harmed businesses in certain ways. But you know what? That's why we have state unemployment and also pandemic employment or unemployment assistance. And if you don't have that and you're such a Republican, maybe you guys should turn to charity, which you always wish to treat as the magic solution to all of our poverty problems. Or dare I say it, maybe you should advocate things like at least a temporary universal basic income, also known as UBI, until the crisis is better cleared up. Maybe advocate a freeze on most evictions and such too. I'd be fine with that even if there wasn't a pandemic personally, but, at least a temporary freeze on certain things just makes sense. Speaking about my situation, I got both state unemployment and pandemic unemployment assistance. I was fully out of work at my regular job for a bit, but now I'm back to getting at least a few hours. In the meantime, I had plenty of time to seek additional side gigs elsewhere, and I have a landlord who is lenient in case I do not, or in case I end up falling behind a bit. And when I say it's also meant to suggest a similar reality for many, if not most other people. The idea that no one else had any ways of dealing with temporary shutdowns borders on nonsense. There's no way that I was like the only person who was relatively lucky and, I'm doing okay. I'll admit that even my mom offered to help me out if things get too rough. Thankfully, I haven't needed that, but it's nice to know I have family that would be willing to help me, and I suspect that would be true of plenty of others out there, if they're experiencing hard times. So what about mask wearing in general? Did the state of Michigan and other states impose the worst form of tyranny by expecting people to wear face masks? Of course not. In fact, you're not even expected to wear masks literally every second of the day. I wear mine if I'm near a crowd or in a building. No one's arrested or even harassed me if I'm out walking to work at between 4 to 6 in the morning alone as a pedestrian. And you know what? I have no problem with them, with the face masks, provided we're all basically doing our best to avoid spreading a virus, okay? So now I want to address some disinformation. One reason for a lackluster response to the pandemic is simple. Disinformation, also known as lies or, of course, false news, to use the overused term. Yes, a lot of this can be pinned on Trump. Example, Trump seemed to suggest that in so many words. The good news is that the more susceptible you are to these kinds of viruses, the more immune you will be, and that it makes it better to have extra than to have none of it at all. I mean, that, to me, seemed to almost be his approach, the herd immunity thing. And it was dangerous. It would have, had we fully gone that route, it could have led to at least 1 million deaths or more. Now, obviously, that's not an exact quote, but it might as well be. His statements often were as dumb as that, if not somehow dumber, and they had a cumulative effect of dumbing people down and helping more of them die. His dumbass, almost pro-virus talk had a large effect on how his cult-like followers responded, and they ended up acting as if scientists were the enemy. Dr. Fauci was regularly facing death threats. In fact, he probably still is. Of course, we can put the well-known Trump madness aside and look at how scientists kind of dropped the ball too. Early on, I do remember none other than Barack Obama urging people to not wear masks and to save them for the doctors and nurses. Well, I get the point. I think it was still a bad move, and I don't think that's what the scientists should have been saying. It's just one additional justification in some people's minds to not trust the experts who give out mixed messages and signals. Alright, so there were scientists who were saying that in the early days of the pandemic, and I think it ended up hurting the overall efforts, honestly. The bad news was, because this was a new virus, many people, presumably even doctors, were still asking the wrong questions and we're, meaning Americans collectively, still not always getting the right answers. As another example, on January 12th, the World Health Organization issued a statement saying there is no clear evidence of human to human transmission. Now, we of course know that there is human to human transmission of the virus. And that was just like an early example of this, right? But I I think that the scientists should have actually just stayed quiet on it at that point rather than even issuing a statement like that, because I'm sure it came back to haunt them in some ways. Again, mixed messages. Some things you should just kind of plead the fifth on, to use that as sort of an expression. Sometimes it's better to just stay silent.